At the last election, the community didn't give any party a majority, and the Greens worked together with the Gillard government and the independents, and we have delivered some fantastic outcomes for Australia. We've delivered the clean energy package, putting $10 billion into renewable energy, into addressing climate change. 3.5 million children across Australia are going to have access to dental care through Medicare as a result of the Greens being in balance of power. We now have a parliamentary budget office in this parliament so that as the political parties go into this election, their policies will be properly costed and able to be compared on a same baseline. So they're just some of the achievements of this period of the parliament, and I hope that people will recognise that these outcomes, these important outcomes for Australia, have been there because the Greens have been in balance of power. And not only that, but we have supported the Gillard government in getting a fairer funding model for schools across Australia as a result of the Gonski reforms, and we've supported national disability insurance. That's a pretty big reform agenda over 3 years in Parliament. One of the areas that the government failed on was to raise revenue. The Greens went out strongly saying we need to raise money and we need to fix the mining tax so that we do have the money to be able to do more for caring for people and the environment. And now we are going into the election campaign and other political parties are putting out their campaign messages. There is speculation that the new Prime Minister Rudd will take into the election other policies on global warming. I really warn the Labor Party about going down the track of creating huge uncertainty around carbon pricing. The Greens have stood out strongly saying we must act on global warming. We have an exemplary package in the clean energy package, and undermining that package for political reasons only, to simply say we're going to move from carbon pricing or a tax to flexible pricing, is a political strategy. It doesn't accelerate efforts on climate change. And what Prime Minister Rudd has to say is whether he will keep the Climate Change Authority, whether he will respond to the science, whether he will stop the new coal mines that are projected for Queensland, the Galilee Basin and the Bowen Basin, whether he's going to back the coal ports along the Queensland coast. Because if you're serious about global warming, you would be keeping that coal in the ground. That is the challenge for Labor. And the one thing that comes out of this period and going into the election is that the community knows that if they want a political party who will stand up strongly on climate change, who will stand up strongly for the environment, to protect the Great Barrier Reef, to protect our national parks, it is the Greens. And you need the Greens in the Senate and in the House of Reps, because goodness knows what the other parties will do when they come under pressure from the Business Council of Australia, from the Australian Industry Group. And you can't help but think what we've heard from Prime Minister Rudd in the last 24 hours has been a pitch to the big polluters represented by the Industry Group and the Business Council of Australia, and giving in to their needs or wants rather than to the clean energy economy and driving those businesses which are going to create jobs and innovation in this period, in this next period of government. So it's going to be now, as we leave the Parliament today, a full-on election campaign. The Coalition are absolutely climate sceptics. Their policies on global warming are a joke, and the clear choice for the community, if you're serious about addressing global warming, if you're serious about caring for people and the environment, then your choice is the Greens. And if you care about reversing the cuts to single parents, if you care about the future, you would reverse cuts to the universities. So I call also on Prime Minister Rudd to fix the mining tax and at the same time use that revenue so that we can reverse the cuts to universities, reverse the cuts to single parents, increase New Start and get with the Greens and protect our national parks.
Come Monday, we'll only have just a year of the fixed price period. If Mr Rudd decides to move swifter to a floating price, it may only be, sort of a 6 to 8 month period where we would be making that transition early, would that have much material difference in driving any change from coal to renewables?
In order to change anything about the clean energy package, you would have to legislate. There will not be a period in which that can be done until after the election, so it's academic to the extent of who will be the government after the election. So that's the question. If there is an Abbott government, then you need the Greens standing strongly in the Senate to oppose any repeal of the clean energy package. If there was a Rudd government, then the question is, where would he get the money? Because if you were to move to flexible pricing earlier, there would be a massive hit on the budget. And if Mr Rudd refused to fix the mining tax, where would he get the money? Because you would be abandoning the biodiversity fund, you would be abandoning low carbon communities, you would be abandoning the clean technology investment fund, which is enabling manufacturing around the country to become more energy efficient and so on. So it's not a simple question as it is being put at the moment as a pitch to the big polluters, as Mr Rudd tried to do the other night, look at me, look at me, look at me, I really want to be friendly to business. Actually, he should have been saying where he's going to raise the money if he intends to do that. Does he intend to maintain the tax-free threshold, or is he going to raise taxes? They're the sort of questions he will have to face when the detail comes out. So we're simply talking here about election policies. Labor will go to the election with a policy on global warming. The Greens are very strongly there saying, don't create uncertainty. Let's actually take it up to Tony Abbott in this election campaign. The worst thing we can do is actually put a big spanner in the works and suggest there is uncertainty about carbon pricing and clean energy in Australia and a price on pollution. It is a gift to Tony Abbott if Kevin Rudd decides to inject uncertainty into carbon pricing. And that's why you need the Greens there, because the Greens are going to stand up strongly and people can rely on us. We have a track record, we have driven action on global warming, and we will stand up strongly against repeal.
The Greens have been forced to change tack in light of the Labor leadership change?
No, the Greens are...
In terms of the election campaign, I should say.
No, the Greens are full on into the election campaign, and actually have been with all the other political parties since the Prime Minister announced a September date earlier in the year. The Greens are the only political party standing up for the environment. We're the ones saying don't hand the powers back to the states. We want to protect the Great Barrier Reef, we want to protect our national parks, and here we have only a couple of weeks ago in Cabinet Labor actually refusing to protect Australia's national parks, and Tony Abbott saying he definitely won't protect national parks, and that's why you need the Greens in there standing up for the environment. And the same for caring for people. Labor sold out on caring for single parents on Newstart. The Coalition have sold out on that. They've both sold out on actually cutting funding to our universities, and it has been the Greens standing there campaigning strongly with the community that is now forcing the other parties to actually consider their position in an election context. And that's why the Greens are so important, because we lead the debate on these issues and we stand firm, and we are not going to crumble in the face of pressure from the Business Council or the Australian Industry Group, which Kevin Rudd has done in the past and which Tony Abbott clearly does all the time.
There's early indications that Labor received a fairly big boost in the polls as a result of Kevin Rudd becoming leader once again. How does that play for the Greens?
I certainly think that you would expect a honeymoon with a change of leader and all that goes with that, a reframing of Labor's position. But what it means is that everybody who knows that Kevin Rudd did a big backflip on action on climate change, how he caved into pressure for the mining industry under the super profits tax, will be realising that regardless of whether Labor gets a bounce in the polls, you absolutely need the Greens there standing firm to shame Labor into maintaining a position when it comes to being decent to people and caring for the environment. But it's a good thing in terms of taking it up to Tony Abbott. It is the job of all of us on the progressive side of politics and the Greens to take it up to Tony Abbott, because he would be shocking for Australia in terms of the environment. He's made that clear. He will attack our national park system. He'll hand back powers to the states. He would be shocking in terms of global warming. He has got a fig leaf of a policy with direct action. It is a joke. And if there is one good thing that a bounce in the polls for Labor might do, it is that there will now be a focus on Tony Abbott's weak and pathetic policy platform. He is a slogan. He is not a policy platform, and hopefully now there will be a serious policy debate.
Where do you expect the European carbon price to be come September? And if an earlier transition was made to an ETS, what would that mean?
The European carbon price is no doubt in some state of flux. The problem is it too is influenced by politics, and there is a European election next year and the German election this year. In that context, it is hard to see the Europeans fixing up their carbon price before the European election, and that's why it wouldn't make any sense for us to go early. It is much better for the Europeans to fix their carbon price so that when we transition to the flexible price and the European price, we've got some stability into the future. The really important thing here is we need a smooth transition to flexible pricing and a rapid transition to a low carbon economy. That can only be strengthened with a higher European price and a settled policy, and we're unlikely to get that in the lead up to a German or European Union election.
You've said all week you'd stand in to stop Tony Abbott getting in charge. Does that mean a compromise, picking the best of a bad bunch to ensure that climate action gets through in some shape or form?
The clean energy package is the law. That's what's great about it. In this period of government, the Greens have led the way, and we have legislated what the International Energy Agency has described as template legislation for developed countries. And I think that is a fantastic achievement. It is the law. After the election, it will still be the law. And it can't be tampered with unless one of the major political parties decides to side with the other to tamper with it. And that is why you need the Greens in the Senate standing firm, saying let's maintain carbon pricing, the whole clean energy package that the rest of the world recognises as a great package. Don't fiddle with it. So all the talk at the moment about what may or may not happen is actually election talk. It's after the election, with the legislation in place. It has to be a change through the legislative process if there is to be a change, and that's why the Greens are important. Thank you.
A call to arms from the Greens leader Christine Milne, live there from Canberra. She's gone through their achievements through this period of Parliament, the clean energy package and also the dental care plan for children. She's warning about the future of policies on climate change, particularly under a coalition government on the cusp now of a no-holds-barred election campaign.